Welcome to the Unzipped Mind. My name is Nick Smith. I'm here with Greg Minikis and Dylan Jessen.
Hello.
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 Intro. Wow.
Just to let you guys know, we are not licensed professionals. This is not a therapy podcast. We are just here to open up the conversation around mental health.
Yeah. Average Joes. Average mental health worker Joes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are you, Nick? Who and what are you?
Well, I said my name is Nick. I've worked in acute care mental health setting for almost 10 years now. Previous to that, I come from more of a little bit of a life experience kind of approach that we'll get into a little bit with other episodes. But I've just been working in mental health in the ground floor, so to speak, for quite a while, and wanted to help do something on a little bit bigger platform, I guess you would say, to kind of help create a community. So that's where I come from. What about you, Gregory?
Oh, hey, man.
Hey.
I'm Greg Minikis. I've also been working in inpatient psych for a while, about 7, 8 years for me. All three of us kind of have a mental health background of our own, just like we've had some struggles in various areas. So that's something that we'll touch upon. But that definitely informs my perspective and, also makes it easier for me to relate to my patients, I feel. And my main focus is in like a holistic approach to mental health care. I'm really into like nutrition and like exercise. Not that I'm not as into exercise myself as I should be, but like I'm as like a treatment modality, like yoga, meditation, nutrition, fresh air, like that whole sort of holistic approach is sort of where I come down. I've had some training in certain areas. So that's who and what I am, I think.
Oh,
Mr. Jessen.
You're up.
Oh, hey, yeah. As it's already been stated too, I have my own personal background that, like Nick has said too, we'll dive more into, and I'll share more as we move along with different topics and stuff. My own struggles, but I also, due to those own struggles and whatnot, went and got myself my little degree in psych, and it's led me to where I met you guys and working in the field and working with people in crises and working with people who are having difficulties with severe disorders, and created this. We're just bringing attention to and creating that conversation around something that I think is very which is very minimalized, I guess. Yeah.
There's definitely an underrepresentation of people with mental health disorders in like the public conversation around mental health, I think. There's also there are therapy podcasts. I used to listen to one on I think it was called Say More About That. I haven't been able to find it recently. And that was good. It was licensed professionals, which we are not, but there is something missing. People who work on the ground floor in the sort of nitty gritty nuts and bolts of mental health care.
Yeah.
So we work in an inpatient setting. But people who work on the ground as social workers, case managers, nurses too. I don't hear a lot of that. And I would like to bring some of that to the conversation, have some guests on. I think there's a lot that we can say because we as much as any role, I think we spend as much time with patients, just talking with patients, chilling with patients, as I can imagine any role, because we're there, locked in for,
Yeah, if not more.
I would say more.
Much more.
I would say much more.
Yeah, I can't think of any other role because social workers, they do spend time in offices, discharge planners, they spend time in offices, whereas we have no office. We hang out on the floor in the psychiatric unit.
Yeah.
Just talking, chilling, getting to know people.
Limited paperwork kind of aspect.
Not a lot of paperwork, and all the paperwork we have involves just being around and looking at people and talking
Checking
to people
on them,
anyway, checking on
Well,
people.
even in aspects of most mental health settings, even when I was working as a direct care specialist, there's days where 6, 8, 9 hours I'd work with a client, but to work with the amount of people we work with, how long we work with them, that's very unique to what we do. It's very unique to inpatient care, and just unique to this underbelly, right? My sister and brother-in-law are actually part of the reason I work in acute care, because that's what they did for a really long time back east. And when I was in school, they worked at residential facilities.
That's hard.
While you were in school?
Yeah. So, and they were talking to me when I was like trying to figure out where my placement was and where I wanted to go with my education and whatnot. They were the ones who were like, you should find a place like this to work and like really see. And I think they put it in a good way, the underbelly, right?
Yeah.
Where it's, it's not the people that you typically see medicated and who are being very efficient, I guess. Or
they've like kind of adapted and
and successful. Yeah, efficient's not the right word. Adapted and are successfully managing their disorders and life, right? And I love the fact that they encouraged me to do that because, and like Greg, you and I share this, is I took that experience and then I took my own personal experiences and my own personal battles and found out that nature and the wilderness and the natural world is really what helped me get over a lot of things. And I've just blended my degrees into natural therapeutics and wilderness therapy. And like, I was really focusing on like wilderness therapy, organic therapies, natural therapeutic interventions. So like, forest bathing, right? It's called Shirin Yoku. And it's like a Korean practice of
you mentioned that
just wandering in the woods.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Aimlessly.
Interesting.
Yeah, you go out, you're deliberately going out to empty your mind, to not think about things, and you just walk in the woods.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful little treat. And wandering gardens, certain things like that. I really was influenced by a lot of those, and that's where a lot of my personal experience comes from.
Well, and you were a wilderness counselor, what would you call
Guide.
it?
I was a guide.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, essentially a counselor, but yeah, we're wilderness guides. And then on every weekend, our therapists would come in and do groups. But when our therapist wasn't out, we were doing like therapeutic groups and working with the kids and whatnot. Yeah. So,
and so you were seeing firsthand so you were working with what was the age range of the clients you were working with?
Adolescents.
Okay.
Teens.
So all adolescents. Okay.
So youngest I had out was 12 turned 13 out there. And oldest I had out there was 18.
Okay. So
and that was like all in one group.
And so you were a guide. So your main interaction with your clients was like leading them through the woods, just literally seeing the effect. Like your job was limited to like, you weren't doing so many groups. You weren't doing like CBT and stuff. It was limited to mostly seeing the effect that being bathed in nature has on people. And
see that impact.
Yeah. You probably saw firsthand just like how powerful it is.
Yeah. And the organization I worked for, their whole philosophy and how because different programs, wilderness therapy programs aren't a generic all one kind of thing. They all have certain different aspects of how they get to the end goal. Ours was set up so it was very introspective. It was very self-driven. It was a rites of passage kind of style of going through life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it was, and I mean, I worked from the way we did it. I was on trail for 2 weeks at a time. So 24/7 for 2 weeks, I worked with these kids. And
you want to talk about patient contact, like nothing but.
Oh, I had a sat phone. That's it. There was no cell phones. Didn't like I was handwriting my partner, right? Like we were writing letters back and forth to each other. Like there was no communication for 2 weeks. And these kids don't come off trail ever. Like they are on trail. We get resupplied once a week. Like we would get resupplied once a week. The only contact they had with another person is when we would switch guides and when we would restock all of our backpacks and restock our goods at trailheads. Wow. And then we were back in the woods. And
that's a lot too, because there's no clocking in, clocking out for you. There's no, you're responsible for all these kids 24/7.
Responsible for their survival.
For their survival, essentially. Yeah.
And being a kid from the mountains and being a kid from the woods, I never thought I'd have to teach somebody how to put a backpack on. The kids that really do, that you see do these big leaps and bounds, right, in wilderness therapy, and where the people who it really hits are the people who are, a lot of the kids who get into wilderness therapy. First of all, if we want to talk about mental health, the world, it's so hard, dude, right? When you have kids who come into wilderness therapy, it's because it's the last straw. It's the last form. Yeah. They've tried different therapeutic modalities. They've tried a bunch of things. And a lot of times insurances won't cover wellness therapy because it's still new.
It's kind of experimental. Yeah.
It's experimental. Some will cover part and whatnot, and they're expensive. It's affluent families. Let's be real. But they're also kids who are mostly urbanized. I had to teach kids how to put a backpack on.
Yeah.
Literally.
Incredible.
Yeah. And then you tell them that they have to go shit in the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very fun conversation.
Yeah, the kids who's just been on their phones, been on screens. That's been sort of like their main way of like downtime. 'Cause
Yeah.
that's what it is for kids nowadays. Like you have to like, no, you're gonna shit in the woods and you're gonna just see nothing but green leaves for 2 weeks.
That's the other best part, because when they're going through their backpack for the first time, they're like, "Where's my toilet paper?" You're out in the woods indefinitely.
You guys have no toilet paper?
There's some
Spanish moss, my friend. Spanish moss, it's the best.
Some maple leaves over there.
Moist Spanish moss.
And yet abrasive enough to get you where you need to be.
It's where you want. It's what you want. But yeah, it's just interesting how, we all have similar but very different
Yeah.
backgrounds, and you guys will all get to know us, and hopefully we get to know you, viewers and listeners, and you definitely will get to hear sides of us.
Yeah.
We will, we're not going to be shy about that, but we all have had very different lives. Obviously, we're individuals, but it's all led us to the exact same spot.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah.
here. Right. And I think that's the beautiful thing about mental health and like the world of mental health.
Lot of different people come to similar conclusions in our field. I feel.
Yeah. But I always like, especially you, Greg, you mentioned whether you're holistic and yoga and you do all this, mindfulness, this stuff that is always the opposite of me. So it's always interesting when you mention, stuff in that sense, that it really differentiates us a little bit. Cause I come from, a lot of mine is, I hate saying mindset, I think that's where a lot of mental health podcasts too, that's their kind of, niche in a sense. But coming from my life, it's like trauma that I've gotten through, or, even how I got clean, off drugs was a lot on my own. I grew up an only child, so I dealt with a lot of it on my own and processed a lot of it on my own. But
When was that? How many years do you have clean?
now I was doing the math earlier. It's about 13 years now.
Wow. Good for you, man.
Yeah, long time. Yeah. Thank you.
That's an accomplishment.
It is.
It's really
And it kind of blows my mind when I think about how many years it's been, but
Half a lifetime.
yeah. But that's what I'm really interested in. I mean, working in our field, there's certain disorders that are presented, or even look at just anxiety. I think about my own anxiety. Sure, I think that I can control a lot in my own mind, but then when you really experience anxiety and when that really gets out of control, you realize the difficulty of that, of being able to kind of wrap that in.
Yeah.
And then look at, certain disorders on the units, like, someone's in psychosis or schizophrenia that, so anyways, I love having those discussions, and I'm really excited to have guests on. We're going to have psychiatrists on. We're going to have clinical professionals on, to like discuss those kind of things. So, cause I love learning on what I can control and to what level of things that I can't control, or other, avenues need to be presented, whether it's medication or whether it's other holistic approaches and stuff. So, I think all of us are just going to learn a lot going through all these.
That's what I'm really excited about, and what the accumulation of all of this work that we've been doing,
Mostly Nick.
that has been accumulating too is, when we were in the early processes of talking about creating this platform, like what we have already said, there are podcasts, there are things out there that are in the same vein. Like there are psychology podcasts. The Broken Mind's a great one, right?
Yep.
That are from the views of people who are therapists or clinicians. And then there's a couple that are people kind of just talking about their own experiences. And I really think that this is in that middle ground where we're going to just kind of mold those two things, and not only kind of discover a little more about ourselves and a little more about the world, but also help I don't want to say help educate, but help create that conversation and access to education and access to just information about it. So I don't know, my hopes, right? And like, I don't know your gentlemen's hopes for everything, but my hopes is that we can create that conversation around things and destigmatize things that are just unknown, because we're so worried about unknowns, and the things that we see on a regular basis, the things that we deal with, people don't.
Yeah.
The general public does not see a lot of it, or if they do, it's things that we want to like hide away from.
They attribute it to something else as well.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, exactly. And it's things that it's those are a lot of things that you want to sweep under the rug, or like hide in the dark corner in the shadows. And I think it's about time, and I think we're in a really good place historically, and just as a society, I think we're in a really good place to have these really tough conversations, and also just bring to light and bring to the surface the people who we have just marginalized, and the people who are minimalized in their issues because they're sick.
Yeah, sick, don't have access to resources, don't have political power.
Yeah.
I think this is a good time in history to be starting a podcast like this. And I think the three of us are well positioned because A, because of our personal backgrounds, B, because of our job, which I think we should describe, and C, because we are in the Portland metro area, and Portland is has a huge homelessness crisis. Many of our homeless have massive homeless population. Many of them have chronic mental illness. It's untreated. Oregon consistently ranks, what are we right now, 49th in the union?
48th, I think.
48th.
Yeah, so
we're
48th.
third from the bottom.
Third from the bottom in terms of provision of mental health care services compared to like people who need it. So massively overburdened system. There's a lot of drug use among the homeless population. There's a lot of drug use in Oregon and generally, but yeah, definitely among the homeless population. And so, we see firsthand a diverse range. We see what it's like working. We see how our patients fare in the inpatient setting, just kind of like interacting with each other and just existing there, often in the lowest points of their lives when they're like deep in a mental health crisis or have just gotten out of one. And then we see the side of like when they're discharging, some of our patients, there's nothing for them but a voucher for a homeless shelter, because that's just that's just all that's available for like their insurance if they're on like a Oregon Health Plan, which is kind of the Medicaid, Oregon sort of branch of Medicaid. And then and when we go out in the city, we see people on the street who just have nothing and like clearly aren't don't have access to resources. So I think we see a diverse range of we see a diverse range of aspects of the mental health system.
Well, that's what I think it comes down to is not insurance is aside. It comes down to availability of resources.
True.
Because if you go downtown, there's 2 shelters. They're on Burnside.
Right.
They get maxed out so quickly.
So
So people don't have options. And then they're posted up in front of a door or in a train station or in a bathroom. And they're just trying to stay warm.
Yeah.
They're just trying to do what they can. And that's the thing. You don't even need to work. And I think that's what you guys were saying, like being in the Portland metro area, everybody has watched the news. Listeners and our viewers too, like, you don't have to live in the Portland metro area. You don't have to live in Oregon to know what's going on. Like I had my friends when the pandemic was like at its bright, when the pandemic was at its topness thing. I had friends back east and I had friends in Colorado calling me about the things they were seeing on the news. Yeah. Our perspective of what was going downtown, you're like, yeah, as long as you're not down there at midnight, you're fine.
Right. Yeah.
You're fine. It's after midnight but everybody saw the violence, they saw the craziness and like the riots. And like, what's crazy though, is that was put on blast, not everything else, not the fact that if you drove from east side, the west side of Powell to the far east side till you almost hit Gresham, all you would see are homeless camps, tents and camps.
Yeah.
And people just trying to survive. And that's what it comes down to, is people are just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. You don't have to work in an acute setting. You don't have to work in mental health at all to see it in your face. Like, dude, I was at Nordstrom Rack the other day. I can't even make this. I was just trying to get some new shoes for my brother-in-law's wedding. And I came across some dude who was just chilling, pantsless.
No pants.
In Nordstrom Rack. Wow. Just took because he was trying to get a new pair of pants. And then he took his pants off at the store. And then they got him finally out of the store. And then for the next 30 plus minutes, like, I'm just trying to check out and do next 30. Homie's just, it was also cold out. It wasn't warm. And he is just chilling with his pants off outside. So these are like, you just see this. And
that dude, he's probably I mean, I shouldn't say probably, but like, there's a good chance that he's mentally ill because a lot of the mentally ill population of our mentally ill homeless population. Sorry, a lot of the mentally ill population is homeless. A lot of the homeless population is mentally ill. Wow. So and that sucks. So like on the one hand, it's like it is kind of funny to see a guy take his pants off in the middle of Nordstrom Rack, but it's an indicator of a massive problem. That's like a huge human tragedy.
Well, it's also because it's so normalized to us in this
it's
area.
very
Like,
normal,
imagine if
yeah.
that happened in, I can't think of a specific area, but say like Beverly Hills or like some place it was, that wasn't as normalized, might be a lot different reactions. But that is, I mean, you can walk 10 blocks in that area and you will see someone using some substance, someone slamming and someone without pants, in or out of stores. It's so normalized in our Portland metro area.
Yeah, I don't even bat an eye now. When I first moved out here, right? So, y'all, I lived in a tiny, secluded little mountain town in Colorado. Tiny, right? You knew everybody. We had transient folk. They would hang out right by the city market, which is Fred Meyer, but they would hang out by the city market. They would, panhandle for a little while, and then they'd be on their way. Then when I moved to Portland, and the first time I moved to Portland, my fiance deliberately brought me to Old Town because I didn't believe her, I guess, enough, and she didn't think I'd believed her enough. And it was a culture shock. It was a huge culture shock moving from Colorado to Portland, and that was when I first saw a dude, it was a dude, openly taking a shit in a storm drain.
Oh, and this was Portland?
Uh-huh. Yeah, in Old Town. Yeah. So, it is a culture shock, and it is something that you see every single day in Portland, just walking around. Like, it's a beautiful city. Do not get me wrong. There are dirty things, and there are things that you just get numb to seeing and numb to dealing with. Like, when I first lived out here, when I first moved here, I'd want to give, if I had dollars in my pocket, I would give it out. And I would want to be there and talk to somebody, or, I would feel odd about walking into a store by having to walk around somebody.
Yeah.
Now, though, it's just unfortunately, the Fred Meyer on Burnside, right?
Yeah.
I either will deliberately go to the underground parking lot so I don't have to deal with anything, or if you park up by the street, it's now I feel, and it feels weird because you feel the numbness of just walking by somebody who's trying to panhandle.
Yeah.
But you can't give them any attention, or you can't.
It's
hard.
tough, man, because like you want to be a human being and you want to treat everybody like a human being. I mean, for my part, like I've always been a little weird about eye contact. That's something that I can, get into a little more, just like my own mental health issues. So like, it's actually quite easy for me to just pretend like no one exists and just kind of like walk with my eyes kind of gazing into the middle distance while I'm walking. But I've been trying to work on that. And so, actually, when I first moved to Portland, I was like, okay, I'm going to live in a city now. Like, it's my first time I'm living in a city, really. And I want to like be a social being and like, walk around and make eye contact and like get in a conversation with strangers. But like very quickly, I realized like a lot of these people, like, first of all, if I do try to engage them, they will inevitably ask me for money. Not inevitably, but like a lot of the time, maybe even more than half the time. Like if I do engage somebody who's like clearly a transient person in conversation, I shouldn't say transient, like a houseless person, then they will ask me for money, and that's uncomfortable because I don't have money to give. Like I live on, I'm kind of live hand to mouth. But so there's that, and then there's just like the overwhelming fact of like, even if I do give this person money, or even if I do give them the time of day, I don't have the money or the mental energy or the social battery life to engage every single person. So like that one interaction, like maybe it brightened up that person's day a little bit, or maybe it didn't, but it's just a drop in the bucket. It's just such a mind-blowingly overwhelming problem. And this is like this is a big West Coast problem. Like I was in San Francisco a couple years ago. It's as bad, if not worse. LA has been dealing with this for a long time from what I've heard. And it's like, it is worse because it's just a huge sprawling city with Skid Row just full of people and just like needles and STDs. And like, it's just a really unsafe, gross, demeaning way to live. And we see it all the time. And it's like, you do get numb to it after a little while.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that, there's limited service for substance abuse, right? It seems like for, transitional housing or, even rehabs from a setting of like acute setting from where we work after someone, stabilizes or detox. And then it seems like for mental health, there's even less. There's much less. Of course, we have outpatient kind of scenarios, but having a transitional place where some folks just need their ID or just need that little bit of support to get a job or because not everybody does. A lot of the homeless population, they are content in a form. They have their own communities, but there are a large percentage that don't want to live that life anymore. They want, but there's just very limited resources for that.
Yeah.
Nick, I'm so happy you just said it and put it in that context. That is a conversation my fiance and I have on a regular basis too.
Yeah.
Is when we're addressing the needs, right, of the community, and when we're addressing like help and access to resources.
Yeah.
I think that's something, and I would love to dive into this more, this topic more in a different episode, and just with maybe some other guests and whatnot. And I would love to hear, I would love to hear in comments and stuff too of what other people's perspectives are, because there is, like, I think when we're talking about resources and we're talking about the homeless population, the houseless population, I think one thing that gets brushed under the rug and or overstated is like, oh, we need to help all these people. I feel like there are, subcategories for everything, right? Or like subgenres for everything. There are people who are vagabonds, who are happy, and that's the life they chose, is a transient vagabond life where they are doing their own thing.
At least get with the options that they were given in their life. This is the one that they've seemed to have chosen, and they persist with it.
Yeah, or but I mean, I have a friend from back east who that's like, even when we were in high school, like he graduated, and that's the first thing he did was went and hopped trains.
Well, fair
And
enough.
like that's how he traveled. That's how he traveled the country. He was hopping trains, and he was very content, and very happy.
All right, fair enough.
But then there are a population of people who are displaced and who just continue to fall through different cracks and different cracks and different cracks. And when you fall down hard enough, there's a very popular saying, and I think we've all heard it in one aspect or another, of you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right?
Yeah.
There is a certain point where that saying is just a jab, and that saying is a saying of privilege. Because what if you don't have those bootstraps to pull up?
If you don't have any boots.
Yeah.
No boots.
If you are down that deep, which people are, especially when you have nothing of your own. You're sleeping on a sidewalk or on somebody else's lawn or in a pull off or in an alley. You don't have anything. There are people who want help. And those are the people we need to address.
Yeah.
There are people, like Nick was just saying, there are people who are content. You are living by your own laws. You are living by your own rules. And there isn't a romantic attractiveness to that kind of living. But in reality, we see the outcomes.
Yeah. And the outcomes are people come in with like crazy fungal infections, or like if it's a woman, like she's been sexually assaulted, dirty needles, like, you get like
trauma.
Yeah. Trauma. Frostbite. Like, man, we see people who just like, they don't have toes. Or they have they've lost most of their toes. So like, it's people are really suffering out there. And I would like to through this podcast, I would like to just bring awareness, like to demystify many aspects of the problem. Because people think of like, I've heard people, I was talking to one person about how I love living in Portland. Like, there's a lot of amazing things to see, and there's a lot of amazing people, like some of the most dedicated, mindful, healthy people who I've met working in mental health care, I've met in Portland. And, so I love living there. But, I was talking to someone, and they were like, why do you want to live in Portland? It's just bum piss. It just smells like bum piss. And I was like, yeah, bum piss. Like, it was just such a gross and kind of like demeaning way to talk about the problem. Like, a lot of those people have schizophrenia, and they like...
It's a lack of education.
It is a lack of education coupled with a lack of empathy. But like education and information tends to make you more empathetic, because then it like humanizes the people that you're just labeling as these like, urinating bums. Was like, no, these are human beings, a lot of whom have been like by life. And how many of our clients have a history of sexual assault, history of sexual abuse when they're kids? Like, that'll for your whole life if you don't have access to like serious therapy. It takes years to undo that shit.
That's the thing. Nick, you've said this before, and I believe a coworker has said this several times. No one wakes up and goes, I want to be homeless.
Yeah.
No one wakes up and goes, I want to have severe drug issues. I want to have a whole lot of trauma follow me around my whole life, and I want to sleep in a tent that has a giant hole in it. That's what I want from nobody. Nobody does that. Unfortunately, life happens, and unfortunately, if you do not have a support system, and if you don't have privilege, like that's what it comes down to too. Is it's privilege.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a support system and people who care about you, you are left out to the dogs, man.
That's I like how you said that too. Like that's my biggest excitement really for this platform is like we've mentioned, is to build this community, which is going to be different for a lot of people. Like it's going to be information, it's going to be education for a lot of people. For some people, it's just you're gonna to not feel alone. The more people that are in this community and that are commenting, that are saying, you know, what they're dealing with or what their family is dealing with, just shows the gravity of how we're all just not alone. You know, I tell my patients all the time, there's no difference between one side of the counter or the other.
Yeah, for real.
Mm-hmm.
One of our staff, I think, said like all of us are just one bad day away from checking in.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I truly believe that.
Yeah.
I do too, and that's like, you know, that's, you said it wonderfully, and that's my hopes as well, is to offer something to create, and that's the community. And I think even down to the most basic studies, the most basic understanding of mental health opposed to mental illness, right, is a community. Okay. And that's the biggest thing. Like there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of research articles. There's so many studies done, and there's videos, and you can just take it back to the rats, Skinner's rats in a box, right?
Right. Hell yeah.
And being coke addicts. You can make a rat a coke addict by creating an environment where there is no stimulation, and an environment where there is no community. A mammal that does not have a drug in its life, that does not have a drug accessible in its natural environment, will drink cocaine water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's alone.
Whereas in the rat park experiment, if that rat still has access to the cocaine water, there's still the drip with the cocaine water that they can get if they want it. If they're surrounded by tons of rats and wood chips and little wheels to run on and little jungle gyms, they're out there, hanging out with their friends and cuddling and having a great time. And they'll try the cocaine water. And it makes them, and like they would show that like they would try it, and then the rats would kind of act weird for a little while, and then they would never taste it again.
Yeah, because they don't need it.
They don't need it because they have social support. Social support is the most, from what I've seen in research, social support seems to be the biggest predictor of mental health outcomes. If you have it, your mental health outcomes are going to be better. If you don't, they're probably not going to be that good. And if you're alone, if you're just totally socially isolated, it is so tempting to just say F it and get high and just dissociate.
And being somebody who is from that world, like I will say, it is when you are alone and you feel alone and you feel unsupported, it is so easy.
Yeah.
It is so
Absolutely.
easy. And that's the other thing in sidebar, right? And obviously we're going to talk about this more when we get into it in episodes, but that's one thing that blows my mind, and I hear people talk about it a lot, and I hear it come up is like, oh, well, if they could just get off drugs, they could get off the streets.
I hate that.
If they weren't on drugs and da-da. Excuse me? First of all, have you ever lived on a sidewalk? And have you ever not had to know where your next meal came from?
Have you ever felt opioid withdrawal?
Yeah, or worn the same clothing for 3 months? Like, I would be smoking heroin too, right? I'd want to be somewhere else physically and mentally than where I'm at in life.
Put Band-Aids over that pain.
100%. So I will never judge people for that. And that's the other thing. And, bringing it back to full circle.
And sidebar.
Yeah. And that sidebar, but coming back to,
different sidebar?
No, coming back to what Nick was saying, dude, just coming back to Nick was saying is my hopes is like building this community. And I love how you put it, Nick, is allowing the space for people to take what they need to from this community. Yeah. Not addressing like, oh, here is your understanding of this, and this is boom. No, but like presenting information, presenting what we learn or like our own life experiences to know that, hey, everybody goes through this. We're all here. Yes, you you might have different pain than I have pain, but we have shared experiences. Let's talk about it. No one has to be alone.
Yeah. It's kind of what we're doing, right? We have such different experiences in life and such different strengths in a sense. And we're taking what we've gathered from our life and giving it. And the more that we build this community and our guests with their specific credentials or experience themselves, and then giving it to this community, and the community, whoever needs, can take what they need. I think that's huge. It's powerful.
And we could also have fun. And if you're just listening because you want to hear a few nice guys just kind of talk shit about their experiences, and you want to hear Dylan's very booming, kind of sultry, bass-heavy voice, and watch his beard move up and down while he talks, that's okay.
I'm Dylan, by the way.
Yeah.
Yep. Again, just to reiterate. But yeah, and that's the other thing too is, if you want to hear, I'm glad we're finally doing this, and I'm so happy to be a part of this, and I'm so happy to see where we can take this, and I'm really excited to see the conversations that come out of every episode, and I'm like, just to read comments, I hope everybody we really do look forward to reading comments and engaging.
Please give us feedback. Yes.
Yeah. No, go ahead. But yeah, engaging with our listeners, and we want to be here, and if you guys if any listeners and viewers need help, we have resources on our website. It's the unzippedmind.com. Unzippedmind.com. And there are resources there you can look up, and
there's also merch.
But there's also research. We'll put some resources in some of our show notes, especially when we're talking about more severe and heavier topics. But we want to help. Just be here. And when I say being wanting to help, I mean just creating a space in a community where we can feel comfortable having these conversations.
Yeah. And to clarify, like Greg said, we do have merch on there, but to clarify kind of our goals, yes, we have a donate option on our website. Yes, we have a Patreon, which helps immensely. We have kind of different tiers of that, and we do have merch that costs us a certain amount to make, and we get the difference of what the price is on there. That is all to support. Right now, we are doing this all on our own. We have no support, and that is fine. And we will continue to do this as long as we can without that. But all of that fuels directly into this podcast. We put nothing in our pockets. It is just to help us produce this.
Yeah. And we would like to be able to get some kind of high profile guests if we can at some point. So yeah, if you want to support us, it'll only help to expand the reach of the podcast. Yeah.
And the first few episodes probably are going to be us like this. We're going to have, I think, we're going to have a stigma episode here following this one. But after the first few episodes, we will have quite a few guests coming on.
Got some lined up already, right?
Yeah. Some more psychiatrists and some more clinical guests. So please feel free to tune into that. But like Dylan said, all of our information, social media is on unzippedmind.com. If not separately, you can find our Facebook page and Instagram and other social medias, the Unzipped Mind.
Please support us, give us love, and then leave comments. Like if there's something we get wrong, or if there's something you feel like we're not talking about in the right way, or there's something we were clumsy about, or you just have suggestions for future episode topics, please tell us. Please give us some feedback, because we want this to be a community. We want this to be an ongoing conversation, not just between the three of us, but with you guys and with the community as well.
Yeah, and if you would like to, depending on what your profession or what you're dealing with or what have you, if you are interested in being a guest and you would like to inquire about that, you can always email us directly about that through our website as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Love it.
We look forward to seeing you guys both. I look forward to seeing you guys both the next episode.
Yeah.
You can speak for all of us.
Yeah.
We look forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
We look forward. We look forward to seeing each other.
Yeah.
We do.
Hearing each other.
Yeah. Sitting down and talking with you guys. And like Nick said, next week we're going to be talking about stigma for our first conversation, our first in-depth conversation. We all feel like that's a really important topic nowadays. And one of the whole reasons we're doing this is to I love that you said it in the way you said it, Greg, demystify the delusions of mental illness.
That's a really good way to put it.
Oh, the people who think they're sane have delusions. No, but
we all have delusions and illusions. But we got a lot of stuff lined up, a lot of good stuff lined up. So please stay tuned.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
All right,
Thank you.